The Renaissance was centred in Florence, the capital of Tuscany before Italy was unified. The word Renaissance literally means rebirth, and in this instance it was a rebirth of classical antiquity. It is important to split the Renaissance into the early Renaissance, beginning in Florence, and the High Renaissance, which moved the concentration of art of that period to Rome. It was fostered by scholars who studied at the recently opened University of Florence. This gave a secular, i.e. non-religious, education, especially one that was no longer connected to classical gods. The course was known as the Studia Humanitatis, and when qualified, the students were known as humanists. Such a humanist would be fluent in Latin and later, in the 15th century, Greek. The principal subjects were grammar, rhetoric, Latin, mathematics, geometry, music, and poetry. With these, they would debate philosophically and quote classical authors in which they were well versed. Most of the students went on to become speech authors and politicians, and therefore wielded great power in society. This was very important in the development of Renaissance art and architecture. The fact that they were classical bibliophiles was a huge change from the Gothic era, which was centred on fear, faith, and the power of the Church. Why Florence? The Renaissance essentially happened in Florence due to three main reasons: the university, the industry of trade and textiles, and banking. Whilst the humanists were philosophical, the people of Florence were generally quite earthbound, pragmatic, practical people, which led to a large increase in documentation, and they were also hugely materialistic. The city prospered through trade of textiles particularly, and made a lot of money internationally. Wool was actually imported from Norfolk, silk and dyes from the east, as far out as Afghanistan, with which they made beautiful textiles. This trade encouraged the formation of guilds, mostly for cloth importers and bankers. The guilds themselves commissioned heavily, and therefore supported this great artistic flourishing. Many became quite wealthy from banking, and invested their money in education for children, especially as those humanists could then tutor them, and they invested in art. However, it is important to make a distinction here. It was not directly the humanists that set off the Renaissance, but indirectly through art commissions, political influence, and emulating the classicists.